As we continue our study in regard to the shepherds, let's start out this morning by looking at John 10. It's kind of interesting. Dale is using at least part of this passage in his sermon this morning, so it is all tying together, I guess you could say. We'll read John 10, beginning in verse 1, and we'll read down through verse 18. It says, "Truly, truly, I say to you, he who does not enter by the door into the fold of the sheep, but climbs up some other way, he is a thief and a robber. But he who enters by the door is the shepherd of the sheep. To him the doorkeeper opens, and the sheep hear his voice, and he calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. When he puts forth all his own, he goes ahead of them, and the sheep follow him because they know his voice. A stranger they simply will not follow, but will flee from him, because they do not know the voice of the strangers." This figure of speech Jesus spoke to them, but they did not understand what those things were which he had been saying to them. So Jesus said to them again, "Truly, truly, I say to you, I am the door of the sheep. All who came before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep did not hear them. I am the door. If anyone enters through me, he will be saved, and he will go in and out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. He who is a hired hand and not a shepherd, who is not the owner of the sheep, sees the wolf coming and leaves the sheep and flees, and the wolf snatches them and scatters them. He flees because he is a hired hand and is not concerned about the sheep. I am the good shepherd, and I know my own, and my own know me, even as the Father knows me, and I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. I have other sheep which are not of this fold. I must bring them also. They will hear my voice, and they will come one flock with one shepherd. For this reason the Father loves me, because I lay down my life so that I may take it again. No one has taken it away from me, but I lay it down on my own initiative. I have authority to lay it down, and I have authority to take it up again. This commandment I received from my Father." I'm sure many of you have read this passage many times, and we want to look at some, I guess we would say, some key points in this passage. First of all, as you look at this, you realize he's actually stating the same thing twice in this passage, which indicates a very strong emphasis on the importance of this concept of the Good Shepherd. Now, let's look at a few key points within this passage itself. Who is the door to the sheep? Who is the door to the sheep? Jesus. Jesus is the door, okay? And he says, if anyone comes in any other way except through me, they are a thief and a robber. Now, you also note in this passage that the sheep hear his voice. They recognize his voice, and as a result, they will follow him. If a voice of a stranger is expressed, they do not recognize that voice, and in fact, they will flee from the stranger. Also, you note he emphasizes the fact that he lays down his life for the sheep. Okay? He lays down his life for the sheep. And then finally, He says there are other sheep that I need to bring into the fold. So he is reaching out to sheep or to those that are outside of the fold or those that are not following him at this time. So we see from this the importance of the shepherd, the role of the shepherd. If we look at some key points here, you'll notice this is sacrificial. Basically, he says, I'm giving up my life, I'm laying it down, and I will lift it up again. So one of his functions is going to be as a sacrifice for others. Secondly, he emphasizes the fact that he will protect the sheep. Now, you'll note in this passage, he says, if others, such as a hired hand, is with the sheep, when a wolf approaches or when danger approaches, what are they going to do? Run. They're going to run away, aren't they? Okay? And so they will not protect the sheep. They will flee from them. And then a third point here, and this, he emphasizes this over and over again, is that I will lead and they will follow. So as we look at this passage, we probably can draw at least one conclusion here. The idea of shepherding or being a shepherd is not a title, it is a function. Think about that for a moment. Shepherding or being a shepherd is not a title, it is a function, indicating activity or action on the part of the shepherd. Comments on this particular passage before we look at another passage. Anyone? You okay? Okay, secondly, let's turn to Ephesians 4, and we'll look at verses 11 through 16. Ephesians 4, verses 11 through 16. Okay, now a shepherd is going to help the followers, or help the sheep, as Jesus is talking about here, to become mature disciples. That is one of the goals of any or all shepherds, is to help the followers become mature. And so what we're going to find here is that the followers have many different roles or many different functions. And this is what we're going to read about in Ephesians 4, beginning in verse 11. Ephesians 4, beginning in verse 11. And he gave some as apostles, and some as prophets, and some as evangelists, and some as pastors and teachers, for the equipping of the saints for the work of service, to the building up of the body of Christ, until we all attain to the unity of the faith and of the knowledge of the Son of God, to a mature man, to the measure of the stature which belongs to the fullness of Christ. As a result, we are no longer to be children, tossed here and there by waves and carried about by every wind of doctrine, by the trickery of men, by craftiness and deceitful schemes, but speaking the truth in love, we are to grow up in all aspects into him who is the head, even Christ, from whom the whole body, being fitted and held together by what every joint supplies, according to the proper working of each individual part, causes the growth of the body for the building up of itself in love. So we see one of the major goals, I guess we could say, of the work of a shepherd is to help the followers mature and become mature disciples. Now, first of all, we need to look at the fact that each individual may have a different role or has different talents or different skills. And as we consider this list, we realize that everyone is going to fit somewhere in the role of an individual in the church as a follower of Christ. As a result, there's one major thing we see here. You'll notice in this passage, he emphasizes unity of faith and knowledge of the Son. Unity of faith and knowledge of the Son. Basically saying, as individuals mature, these are two areas in which they're going to continually grow and reach maturity. One of the roles of the shepherd is to help the individuals go through this process to develop greater and greater unity and to develop greater knowledge of the Son himself. So unity of faith and knowledge of the Son is very, very important. Now, you'll also notice in this particular passage an interesting statement talking about we are no longer children, we're no longer children that are going to be moved by the wind or misled by trickery or misled by deceit, because we are mature in Christ. So, as we look at the scriptures, one thing you'll note, and Paul does this quite often, he warns them about false teachers. He warns them about wolves coming among the flock. And he repeats that over and over again, in his letters. So, what he's indicating here is that as the Christian matures, they are no longer going to be misled by outside influences, by trickery, or by deceit. The shepherd has a responsibility to help them mature to the point where that is no longer a problem. Okay? Maturity is going to be very, very important. And then there's another phrase here that also is very important. And it says, when a Christian is mature, they will speak the truth in love. That applies to the shepherd also. The shepherd will speak the truth to the flock in love. Comments in regard to this particular passage?
Except these shepherds, he said that on verse 11, it was he who gave some to the apostles, and some to prophets, and some to evangelism, and to be pastors or teachers. We have them be teaching on our classes. The shepherds are teaching our classes, right?
Right, right.
And that's how they demonstrate their love. Because other than that, I don't have no connection. Other than that, I'm out there. I come in and out, so I don't have no connection back. I know that through the teaching, I can see that certain speakers and relate to who was the shepherd.
Right, right.
Who was a teacher, who was invited. we don't have much of the prophets, but we prophesize because we speak the word of God.
Right. Okay. Now remember when this was written, okay? When this was written, the apostles were still active, okay? And so as a result, they are considered as one of the important roles as far as the church was concerned, as far as the kingdom was concerned. Okay, other comments?
How do you speak the truth in love? I mean, there's a lot of people, when you say something, they're obstinate about it. I mean, they have their views just like somebody else does. And speaking, I know it's not coming across with anger. I know it's not coming across with, I know it all, and it's not coming, but how do you show that love in such a way that it doesn't necessarily turn people off to where they'll say, you might have a point there. That might be
one of the things is an approach is, okay, this is what is in the scriptures, okay? And so I want to discuss that with you or teach that to you. And it is up to you, it is up to them to accept it. In other words, the approach is not going to be, I'm going to beat you over the head with the word, but I'm going to give you the word, and then you are the one that needs to follow the scriptures. But you're right. Some cases that's a very difficult thing to do.
You can ask them, what would Jesus say?
Yeah. Okay. What would Jesus say?
I think prayer and asking God to open the heart. I mean, that's got to be an area where closed-mindedness is hard to break through. I mean, it's like a brick wall when you're trying to say something, and it's, you don't want to turn people away, but you want to help them understand.
Their mind is made up.
Their mind is made up.
It's going to be very difficult to change.
Outside and inside.
But prayer may be one of the factors right there. And you've probably observed this in individuals that have been opposed to God and God's teaching for many, many, many years. And then they change and they come back. And it does happen. It does happen. Other comments? Yes.
I have spoken to one, and he bluntly didn't want to answer my question or wasn't patient with me. But I think to myself, the Lord said to me, put yourself in other people's shoes, The thing is there that I can get upset or mad, but the thing is that role is very hard. That role, I think anybody that takes leadership, it's hard. But sometimes they're burned out or they're too stressful or something's not right. But we need to pray for that person. And we can't take it personal because they are growing and probably they need more teaching. But we need to consider that we have to be patient with them too. I'm learning that because anybody you go to, they can act the smartest people, but they're not always the smartest people. But in God's grace, we must pray and we must forgive one another. Don't have nothing against anybody, especially a leader.
But again, teaching the truth with love. Okay, that's the key right there. Okay, and even though your teaching might be rejected, that doesn't mean you stop. Okay, you continue to teach with love. Other comments?
There's a certain beauty about teaching in love.
They know well, and the person knows that you are concerned about their well-being. That's the beginning point right there. Okay. They may not accept what you're saying or what you're teaching, but with prayer, eventually that could come. That could develop.
I like the shepherd, to see the shepherd, like when Jesus had the apostles and Jesus, the apostles were down and the lady talking or complaining or talking things about him. Then Jesus would they would come to Jesus about anything to ask Jesus. And that's the kind of shepherd that I like. But also too, we need to mature too. We can't always be asking questions or wanting things because when we don't get an answer, it doesn't seem like it fits very well. So we need to be able to understand that people do get tired about asking questions and answering questions. So, but Jesus was always there for his apostles to listen to them. And that is the beauty of love and he's a shepherd.
Well, and yes, last time we talked about communication, and that's a very important part of communication. A shepherd will be an individual that the flock, members of the flock, are very interested in coming to with concerns, okay? And that is a continual process.
Another thing, okay, I have never heard a person being a shepherd needing help. And I never have heard a shepherd asking for prayers. So I don't know if they do that. But do they just go to the group that they're with the leaders, or with certain people? Do they just stay that way together, but they never ask any prayers like people ask prayers at the worship service?
Right.
So, but I never have heard that. Unless they had to address a problem, even sin, but hopefully we don't. We don't have shepherds like that, but nobody's perfect.
Exactly.
But we need to probably, sometimes we've had the request to pray for our shepherds, but we are not aware of the problems that they might be having. So we need to pray about those things together.
Well, and I think as we develop or as we gain an understanding of what the role of the shepherd is, then you'll know exactly what to pray for.
Yes.
Okay. The different concerns. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that here in just a moment. Other comments? One of the characteristics of the shepherds, or a shepherd, is to protect the disciples so they can walk with Christ. Okay. Protection is a very important factor here. We know that dangers are going to come. There's going to be, as we mentioned before, deceptions, persecution, distractions. All of these are going to be coming to an individual or individuals, and the shepherds are to help them to discern that these are not things that are dictated or things that are expressed in the scriptures. The shepherd has to be able to teach with love, but the shepherd does not deviate from the gospel. Okay. What are some of the outside influences that you see today? What are some legitimate threats from the outside?
Social media.
Okay, social media.
And the computer, if it's on the internet, it's got to be true.
Yeah.
Kind of problem.
Right.
And there are a lot of things on the internet that aren't true.
That are not true. Okay. What other threats do you see?
What about socialism? Like functions like there's a singles group everywhere, just about everywhere, so often, more than our group in church. Not only that, co-workers that might not be good influence. The influence, that we have today at work or at school, we have our children going to school. It's pretty tough because it's hard to talk to our children and convince them what is true. That kind of deal is really hard. And the way people talk today, television is bad, and certain things are not permissible, you know? Like say, the drinking is getting pretty popular. It's just like a Coke, Dr. Pepper.
Right.
But it's not. Smoking is becoming to be one of those little devices, you know? And everybody talks about it. And everywhere, in a restroom, everywhere you go, maybe we need to have a selection because they got beer and they got the music is better.
All of those distractions are coming from the outside. They have always been there. Okay.
They come inside their home too.
Okay. Now, what kind of distractions do we see within the church?
I come and go.
Yes, sir.
Keeping on the same lines of the social engineering that has been going on in our society has reduced the number of people going to our church.
Right.
One of the big examples to me is political correctness. Never voted on it, never seen it come up on a ballot, but it's law.
Right.
And it detracts radically from being able to speak the truth.
Exactly. Exactly. And another factor, and we've seen this develop over the years, is the fact that, or the debate, actually, I guess we would say, that there's nothing right or wrong. Okay, that has been a major factor and it continues to be right. If there's no right or wrong, then you can do whatever you want to do and it doesn't make any difference. Okay.
Just indifference.
Right, right.
We're indifferent to things.
Morals, there's really no justification for having morals. And that goes back to continuing to accept the idea that everything is relative. Okay? No right, no wrong. And so you can live that way. The shepherds have the responsibility of educating the flock. As they mature, they will begin to realize that the scriptures are indicating what is right and what is wrong. And so that's the beginning point. Maturity is going to lead to rejection of this idea that there is no right or no wrong. Another factor, and this one became very evident in the past few years, I don't hear it quite as much now. There is no God. Okay? There is no God. If there's no God, then whatever you do, it doesn't really make any difference. Okay? So all of those are outside influences that are going to have a major effect on the followers. And the shepherds are going to be responsible for protecting the individuals from those outside influences. Other comments?
Are you seeing a lot of lack of knowledge and wisdom in the church as far as
lack of knowledge? Right. The lack of Bible knowledge. Okay. You're right. Right. Because some situations, the families depend on the church to provide all of the knowledge for their children. Well, we know that that's not adequate just from a time standpoint. Okay. The home is very, very important in this whole process. Okay, other comments? Yes.
One thing that I've noticed, through the last many years, but is that we don't teach people that have just coming into the church the fundamentals as well as we used to. We used to have classes on fundamentals,
right,
and for people that were new, and we don't have that so much anymore. So they just kind of get what they can get from whoever they're around, and sometimes that's misleading. I kind of think, I know when my husband was an elder over in Altus, that was a concern with them that they redirect that and try to help the people learn
basic Christianity,
the basic things.
Right. That's a good point.
Uh-huh.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
I had a concern about in that area. I used to feel that I would come to church and I would hear the gospel being preached.
Right.
And there were people that were being baptized, not only the families of these little children that are being baptized today. We hear a lot of parents baptizing their children, but we're not hearing grown-ups being baptized or people coming into the church, listening to the gospel and being converted to the truth. So I feel like the gospel went into discipleship. So I just thinking the gospel is not being strong preached like it used to.
Well,
But I do see that is individually, I am being built, only being built,
Right.
being a discipleship. And I am the one who's supposed to have all the knowledge, and I'm supposed to take the knowledge to somebody else, but still, I need somebody else to teach the gospel. I'm teaching the gospel because I'm reading the Bible.
Right.
To people. I want people to know the Bible. I want people to learn to read the books of the Bible, to learn the stories of the Bible. But we do not have that strong, holy, spiritual emphasis in the gospel. I have a great concern for that.
Okay. Yes, Pat.
We have the responsibility of ourselves, and what the example we set to others. Okay. And we need to teach that, you are responsible, not somebody else, and not looking around and saying, well, so-and-so does that, so it must be okay. No, we are responsible for ourselves.
Exactly. In fact, let's look at something here related to that. If you would, let's turn to Hebrews chapter 13. Hebrews chapter 13. Let's begin reading, in verse 17, chapter 13, verse 17, and we'll read down through verse 19. It says, obey your leaders and submit to them, for they keep watch over your souls as those who will give an account. Let them do this with joy and not with grief, for this would be unprofitable for you. And then he continues on and says, pray for us, for we are not sure that we have a good conscience, desiring to conduct ourselves honorably in all things. And I urge you all the more to do this, so that I may be restored to you the sooner. As you look at this passage, and there's other passages that are similar to this, the one conclusion that we would probably draw here is that the shepherds and the sheep have responsibility. Okay, think about that for a second. The shepherds and their followers, the sheep, both have responsibilities. Following the leaders is one of the responsibilities. Growing to maturity is also a responsibility. And again, we point out the shepherds have the responsibility to help the members or the flock to grow to spiritual maturity. So responsibility here not only rests with the shepherds, but it also rests with the individuals that are part of the flock. Okay, other comments? Yes, Pat?
We need to ask when we have a problem or we don't understand something.
Right.
We need to go to the leaders and ask.
Right.
And we have to learn to do that. Because a lot of times we'll just pick a friend. We'll just pick somebody, you know, and say what we were thinking.
Right.
And really, we need to take that to someone, you know.
Basically, that's the mentoring process enters in there. In other words, a member comes to a leader with a particular question, and that's responsibility of that leader to help them work through that question. And that's a good
And they may
point.
direct them to someone else.
That could
It
be
may
true.
not be the elder that ends up.
Right. And in fact, we see situations where we may say, okay, we feel like you need to go to a counselor to help you deal with this particular problem. And that's quite, well, I won't say quite often, but very often that may be what's needed. Okay. But the shepherd has a responsibility. Yes.
Gary, I was converted to the gospel. I was converted to the gospel, and all the leaders all the preachers that have taught to me, they taught me lots of good things. And also my teachers in Bible classes.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't gone to a Spanish congregation, but I am working with some of the Spanish people. I had a couple from the McDonald's from Sunset. They went to Sunset, and they're very good. They do teach the gospel in Spanish. The problem is I spoke Spanish, but I can't carry it as good as I can. I mean, the appropriate way.
All right.
But I'm working on it, and I think I'm just going to engage myself several years or years or so and learn more.
Right. Well, and you may need to involve someone that is fluent in Spanish in that teaching process.
Yeah.
You follow me?
His wife is.
Okay.
He's really good.
Yeah, I know the McDonald's.
He's really good.
Okay, other comments?
I can see that the church has changed over the years. I grew up in a non-class church, not all the time, but probably middle elementary school. We went to a church that didn't have class. And I can see where over the years we met people that didn't believe you should eat in the church building. I've heard, I mean, there are just so many things that come up in the church that people believe is wrong, as well as they believe this could be right. You know, and it has changed over the years. Now there's a lot of churches that have a praise team, or they have women doing different things, or you know, and it's really hard to be a leader and know what is accepted.
Right.
What God doesn't say, okay, you can't absolutely do this. I mean, there's no set record, no. You know, we have some areas in there that's
areas that can be very divisive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've seen it change over the years.
Right.
I've seen a lot of things,
and
you know, from my own experience.
If you think about it, that relates back to what has happened in our society over the years or in our culture. Okay, now remember, we're asking you to look at the congregation, look at individuals to see if they meet or have the characteristics that we have discussed or that we've talked about. If you see someone or identify someone that you feel like could be a good shepherd, then you talk to them and say, I would like to nominate you to serve as a shepherd. Are you willing? And what you'll find is some individuals will say, no, I cannot or will not, for different reasons, okay? If they say, yes, I would be willing, then turn the name or names into one of the elders or one of the ministers. And we're building a list from all of the names that come in. You need to remember that just because an individual is nominated, they may not be appointed because they go through an interview process, and there may be some things that we decide, or the elders, current elders decide, this does not fit. Okay. There are certain things that have happened and you may not even be aware of them, but that's the key right there. Okay. Right now, I mentioned this last time, the elders have started working on a list and we'll add all these names that come into this list. There's about, don't hold me to this, but there's about 30 names on that list right now. Okay. As I mentioned before, there's no magic number as far as leaders are concerned. Okay. So we'll go through the process and then we'll see what develops or what comes out of the process itself. Next 2 weeks, we need to get names from the members of the congregation. Okay, and then we'll proceed from there or from that point. Yes.
You said numbers. Do you mean ages? Do you require a certain age and certain?
No. The age, there's not really any specifications on age. Really what it goes back to is maturity. And remember, these are individuals that when you look at them, they're already doing a whole lot of what the shepherds do. You follow me? And that would be an indicator that they might be very useful or functional as far as leader is concerned. Okay. If they're not involved in any way, probably not. Okay. Other questions or comments?
Are we having leaders that are retiring or not wanting to? Are we getting more people that we need more elders? What?
Right. We have some leaders that, and due to health reasons and so forth, that will probably be retiring soon. Okay. Right now, there's 11 active shepherds. Okay. Other questions or comments?
Are you going to retire? Are you going to retire?
Sometime, yeah.
Okay. As long as it's not right away.
Okay, thank you for your attention, and I hope these 2 lessons have been very useful to you. And pray for this process.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.